Hi everyone. Today we're going to look at multiplying two mixed numbers. Now, if you had happened to watch my previous lesson of multiplying a mixed number times a whole number, we said there were two strategies for solving it. You could also use two strategies for solving this one. I will show you the distributive method now because it helps us to understand how we're getting our answer. But once we've gone through that process, you may decide that going with the method number two, which is changing both mixed numbers to improper fractions, may be the way you really want to go when you're generally solving these questions. But I want to show you the distributive method first. So keep in mind, we're multiplying 1.5 times 1 3/4. This whole amount times this whole amount. So if we look at it from the distributive method way, and it's easy to see that in an area model. You all remember this because we've done this before. I'm going to take my 1.5 and I'm going to separate it into two parts, 1.5. Then I'm going to take my 1 3/4 and separate it also. So this quadrant here, this section is 1 times 1. This section here is 1 times 3/4. This section here is 1/2 times 1. And this section here is 1/2 times 3/4. So it's important for you to see we're taking each component, multiplying it the 1 times both the 1 and the 3/4, multiply the 1/2 times both the 1 and 3/4. Now we solve each quadrant. 1 times 1 is going to be 1. 1 times 3/4 is 3/4. 1/2 times 1 is going to be 1/2. And then 1/2 times 3/4, a little bit harder. Remember, multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. This ends up being 3/8. So this is a bit challenging because we have three different denominators. And we remember from adding fractions, we can add fractions with different denominators. So you have to change all of these. What's really great, since we're using the same factors, the common denominator is 8. So 3/8 can stay the same. 1/2 would be 4/8, and 3/4 would be 6/8. So we're going to add up all of our 8s. 6/8 plus 4/8 are 10/8. 10/8 plus 3/8 would be 13/8. Don't forget the 1. We have 1 and 13/8. Of course, we're going to change 13/8 to be 1 whole and 5/8. So altogether, this one plus this one and the 5/8 is going to equal to 2 and 5/8. Now that was a lot of work. It really, really was. So let's try it using method B and see how it goes. I left our answer from the area model there for us to refer back to. But now let's try method B. Method B is changing each mixed number to an improper fraction. 1 1/2 is the same thing as 3/2, 3/2. And then 1 3/4 is the same thing as 7/4. Now multiply across. 3 times 7 is 21. 2 times 4 is 8. Change 21/8 to a mixed number. 8/8 would be 1 whole. 16/8 would be 2 wholes. 21, take away the 16, leaves us 5/8. 2 and 5/8. Which did you think was faster? I don't think it's much of a race, but still understanding the area model, understanding that we're multiplying the whole 1 1/2 times the whole 1 3/4. That's why it's important to try it this way. Now, I want to try it with you again. This time, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I want to show you how you may end up with really larger numbers and how you could try to avoid it. Let's say my number now is 1 4/5 times 2 3/6. So on your own, first change them both to improper fractions. When we do that, we get 9 fifths times 15 sixths. Now you could solve as usual, multiply across 9 times 15, and you would get 135. 5 times 6, which is 30. Then you have to simplify that, which would be 4 and 15 over 30. And then simplify that, which is 4 and 1/2. And that's fine. That's one way to solve it. I want to show you, though, another method instead of multiplying across, which some students may have seen before. Let's say again, down here I'm going to work now. Let's say I take my 9 fifths times 15 sixths. And I want to make these simpler. I want to remove any unity fractions that I can find. So I'm going to take my 15, right? I have a 5 here. So I know that 15 is the same thing as 3 times 5. So now I have a 5 in the denominator and 5 in the numerator. I can simply take them out. Great, that's 1. I don't have to multiply them. What about my 6? I know that my 6 is the same thing as 2 times 3. So again, I can cross off this 3 and this 3. What will I be left with? I still have this 9, and I still have the 2 as a denominator. So then I get 9 over 2, which is the same thing as 4 and 1/2. So some students may like this approach, breaking down larger numbers into their factors to find the unity fraction, or you could just go the usual way and solving across. Both will get you the right answer.